If you've ever worked on a song and it feels like nothing special, chances are it's because you've buried the hook of your song in tons of layers. So today I want to share with you 2 things you can use to create clearer, stronger song ideas. These aren't expensive softwares or plugins. In fact, they're things you can leave this video and start using right now. Now, what I'm about to show you is straight from my Producer Launchpad program, which has just opened up for enrollment as we speak. In this program, I help producers like yourself bring their electronic music tracks up to a professional quality in just 12 weeks. In the program, you'll get a personalized strategy for your goals. You'll get weekly feedback on your music. You'll get a number of one-on-one sessions with me, weekly group sessions with the entire community, software discounts from manufacturers like SoundToys, FabFilter. So if you are interested, click the link down in the description now and enroll before spots fill up, which for January, they are quickly filling up. And with that, let's get on with the tutorial. So in this lesson, I want to cover 2 extremely important concepts when it comes to idea generation. The rule of 3 and foreground, midground, background. What these concepts are going to do is allow you to compose song ideas that are textured, layered, and also mixed appropriately. So let's start with the rule of 3, because then we'll discover what foreground, midground, background is and how that incorporates into that. So the rule of 3 is a very common idea in music composition in general. It's a psychological concept in a way, because what it says is that a listener can only listen to 3 main elements at a time. So if I'm listening to a song, what am I paying attention to, right? There's always going to be one main thing, whether that's the vocal, the lead, the percussion line that's really grabbing my attention, whatever's designed to grab my attention at any one moment. In a given section, sometimes that could be 2 or 3 different things that are interchanging. But at one point in time throughout a song, there's one thing that's grabbing my attention. But there's only 3 things I can focus on at a time. So if I'm listening to a song, I can only really hear the interaction between, say, the drums, bass, and vocal. I'm not necessarily listening to the individual elements, I'm listening to the whole song. So I would notice if other things beyond those 3 main elements were missing. However, I can only really think about 3 main elements at a time and how they interact, right? And that's an important concept to consider when you're in the DAW putting a song together, thinking about how the listener is going to receive that on the other end. So you have to be able to identify in any given part of the song, what are the 3 main elements? Now, again, number 1 is the first one you should identify. So for me in this song idea, listen to it and tell me what you think is the main element. Now, it's a little bit tricky here because I've deliberately not made it super clear. The question is what is the main element? Now, a main element could be one element or it could be one part of an element. And in this case, you might start to think, oh, the vocal is the main element. And in which case, I would probably say you're correct. The vocal here it actually functions as a melody on top of an existing melody. So if we listen to this chord progression, it's actually a melody built into these piano chords. However, we've added a filter to the sound to kind of push this sound into the midground a little bit, which I'll talk about in a second. So this vocal comes in and fills that space. Now, this could be a great example in a track where without the vocal in there, the melody in the piano takes precedence. But when we have a more clear element over the top of this more subdued melody, it kind of takes the back seat, right? So a number 1 element is always going to be loud, right? It's always going to be prominent in the mix. So you have to understand that. Now, in this track, I would say our vocal, keys, and drums are the 3 main elements, right? So let's listen to just those 3. Well, if we solo all the drums. The keys are doing the chord and a bit of melody work. The vocal is doing the main melody and the drums are providing that backbone, Right now, that's not to say there aren't other elements in the song. Of course there are, but those are the main three. And those are the main three I anticipate listeners are going to focus on. For example, what about the other elements, the sub and the strings down here? Well, if we solo those two on their own. There's not much going on there that's going to give us context, right? We couldn't tell they were related to this song without hearing those other elements. However, they are important supporting elements. The bass line in another genre might be one of the main elements, but in this case, it's more supporting. And so when we add them in, we notice them when they're missing, but we don't miss them in the same way we would miss the vocal or the keys. And so we have to identify what are those three main elements. Again, this doesn't mean you can't have more in your song idea. You could have 6, 7 ideas, or instruments, should I say, in your song idea, but most of them will be supporting, right? Now, that's 4 onwards. Elements 4 onwards should be supporting elements, or they will interchange. So say you have 3 main elements in one section, and then in another section, one of the 4th element goes to the 3rd, and the 3rd goes to the 4th. So there can be changes over time, but that's starting to talk about the arrangement, right? Which is a bit out of the scope of what we're talking about this week. Now, we have to talk about foreground, midground, and background and how that relates. If you think of your song as a painting or a picture, there's going to be 3 categories each instrument or sound fits into. The first is going to be foreground. Now, the rule of 3, we're talking about 3 elements that are going to fit into the foreground of your mix. What is the main thing or main things that are going to be sticking out? So drums, keys, vocals in this case, those are the things that are in focus. We're listening to them, we're seeing them. They're in the center of the picture. The midground is kind of the supporting elements. So in this case, I would say that the bass is kind of, I would say, a midground element. It's there, it's present, but it's not demanding as much attention as the other elements. And in this case, you've also got the background, which are these little elements that create texture and atmosphere. They are definitely missed when they're not there, but they're not essential for the track. And I would put the string into the background category here. Without it, it's definitely missing texture and depth when you remove it, but the song holds up without it, right? So that's how you would separate elements. Now, again, most of your elements are probably, especially the important ones, are going to be in the foreground, right? But there are definitely supporting elements in the midground and background that are necessary for a song to reach its full potential. So when you're adding an element, ask yourself the question, is this a foreground, a midground, or a background element? And does that change over the course of my arrangement? Again, maybe a foreground element may go to a midground or even a background element and vice versa. So to recap, the rule of 3 states that you can only focus on 3 elements in a song at a time. One of those being the number 1 most important element, the hook. And also the 3 sounds that are in the forefront of your track are going to be in the foreground. Everything else will fit into the midground or background accordingly, depending on its loudness and role in the composition of your track. Great. In the next lesson, we're going to be talking about how to generate song ideas fast, how to become a machine so that you can churn through song ideas and pick the ones that are really going to have the most potential. Can't wait to share some things with you there, and I'll see you there. And I trust understanding the rule of 3 and foreground, midground, background will help you create more clear, memorable song ideas. Now, if you do want more help from me, remember to check out the 12-week Producer Launchpad program down below in the description. There are limited spots each month, so I can work with the right number of students. So if you want to be one of them, get in real quick. January is filling out super fast. And if you have any other questions, you can even book a call with me down on the page. There's a link down at the bottom, and we can chat before you enroll. Why not? And with that, until next time, happy producing.